Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another episode of Cowboys Overtime here on StarTelegram.com. I am Fort Worth Star Telegram columnist Mac Engel. I am joined by Mr. Nick Harris, and I have really bad news. I can't hear anything. Have I lost audio? Nick, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah, it was weird.
There we go.
With the whole audio behind our video lead-in, I'm like, oh no, my technology's totally betraying me. I can't hear anything.
Gotta keep you on your toes around here. Keep you on your toes.
It's very exciting. May shut down. Nick, it's good to see you coming off an exciting, thrilling Dallas Cowboys blowout win against the undefeated New York Jets. Or wait a minute. I'm sorry. Completely defeated New York Jets.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just a tiny misprint. Cowboys win. Cowboys win. Get ready for the Super Bowl as the Cowboys have improved to 500. Get a little love for that Jason Garrett era football. 2-2-1. That stupid tie is going to be haunting us for the rest of the season. Yeah. However, let's focus on the positives. It's a beautiful day. It's not 110 degrees in Dallas-Fort Worth, even though it is mid-October. Cowboys beat the Jets 37-22, and Jerry Jones celebrated by accidentally giving the middle finger to Jets fans. Totally accident. It happens. This usually, a lot of times it morphs into the middle finger, just as an accident. The Cowboys have fined Jerry Jones for his accident.
The NFL has. The NFL.
Sorry. Yeah, big difference. This isn't the Cardinals punishing their head coach for punishing the football player who accidentally didn't score a touchdown. Where are we on this in terms of the NFL fining Jerry $250,000 because he probably doesn't have it, and he's appealing it? Nick, give us an update on Middle Finger Gate.
Yeah, so he had said yesterday on the radio that he meant to just point at the fans, and he ended up doing the wrong finger, if you will. Hey, I have some personal experience in this department.
Yeah, tell that. I want to hear it because you put it.
When I was a senior in high school, it was like the day that you walk in, like a couple weeks before school starts, and you meet all your teachers and everything. And I had just met one of my teachers, and I'm coming back down the hallway to meet another teacher. And as I'm waving by, I meant to throw up like a peace sign. And I accidentally threw up a middle finger, and she didn't take to that too kindly. She didn't believe my mishap. I got a week of lunch detention for that. That did happen. So we ended up making up later, and I think she believed me later on. And I was like, that's credit. So if I mess up down the line, you already gave me a week of lunch detention. But anyway,
you had it in the bank.
Jerry could have gone wrong here. And especially if it was 82, I see how it could happen maybe a little bit easier. But nevertheless, I think this fine is going to stand.
Well, hopefully he can, maybe find a loan shark or some bank who will float him a loan. You picked the Cowboys to beat the Jets. I did not. And about 5 minutes in, I'm like, holy God, the Jets are so much worse than I actually thought they were going to be. Some terrific individual performances, but to me, the most impressive performance was an offensive line that was missing everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think people can adequately put the kind of weight on what that Cowboys offensive line and their offense did. I don't care who they were playing. You're playing basically all backups in week 5 at the offensive line, and you go out and roll to 37 points. Who do you give credit to? The fact that do you put it on the Jets defense for being bad? Do you give it to Will McClay and his staff? Do you give it to the offensive coordinator? Who do you give credit to? The fact that Javonte Williams and all these different guys tore it up behind a line that is all backups?
Yeah, I think you can give credit to a lot of places. I'm going to keep it to 2, though. Will McClay, the scouting department, for having the depth on that offensive line that they do have. And then Clayton Adams, the offensive coordinator, who is effectively the run game coordinator and helps maneuver that offensive line and puts it together from an operations standpoint. Those two guys, they are the big key cogs toward that offensive line playing as well as it did on Sunday against the Jets. And that Jets defensive front, it's one of the best in the league. Like, the Jets are awful. They're putrid, but they do hang their hat on their defensive front and that they can get to the quarterback. They can stop the run. And they have one of the best interior defensive linemen in Quinnen Williams in the game. Will McDonald is starting to finally come into his own after being a first-round pick out of Iowa State a couple of years ago. This is a talented front, and the Cowboys completely neutralized them. Of the 4 replacement offensive linemen that were playing in this game, from left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, they only allowed 3 combined quarterback pressures in the pass game, and they all came from left tackle Nate Thomas. So the interior, you're going up against one of the best interior defensive linemen in the game in Quentin Williams. The interior with Hakeem Adeniji at left guard, Brock Hoffman at center, and TJ Bass at right guard did not allow one quarterback pressure in this entire game. That's the first time that's happened in Dak Prescott's career, and it was a makeshift practice squad offensive lineman in essence. It's really impressive, and I got to give credit to Clayton Adams and Will McClay for both of their parts in doing that, and also the players. I mean, the players, they had to be able to step into that role. Left tackle Nate Thomas. If you had told me back in April, hey, Nate Thomas is going to start a game, I would have said you were crazy. I would say he's going to be on the roster, and he's not only on the roster, but he's starting a game. Hakeem Adeniji, who's mainly played right guard, right tackle throughout his career, moves to the left side, left guard. It was the first time he had started at left guard in quite a long time. The Garland High School product, and he stepped in and played fantastic. And then Brock Hoffman and TJ Bass. I think TJ Bass, he's on the last year of his rookie deal. I think he's going to go get a starting job somewhere in the offseason. I think he's proved that in these 2 games.
Well, the one that I thought was pretty good last season was Brock Hoffman. Hoffman was a starter. I don't maybe someplace, the way he filled in last season for Zach Martin, I thought that guy can be a starter. And I still, I think all the guys that you mentioned, and it's one game, but still the way they played normally. If you win a game like that, if you're playing 4 backups on an offensive line, you're barely going to win. You're not going to roll to 300 yards and 150 yards in the ground and all that other stuff. They look terrific. Of the other developments that we saw in that game, and obviously people are saying, well, it's the Jets. That's you do have to weigh that in. Did you see anything on defense? Because there's somebody on Twitter who's pointing this out, and I think he's right. Did you see anything on defense that made you say, I don't know about this. This doesn't look a lot better?
Run defense was awful, and it was the one thing that the Jets were able to consistently pound that Cowboys defensive front with. And Breece Hall finished that game with 8.1 yards per carry. It's the first 100-yard rusher that they've allowed this year. And we'll talk about some of these opponents that they have coming up, and specifically Rico Dowdle next week off the performance he's coming off of. That's a bit of a concern. Now, overall defensive concerns, I think, you balance it out and it's less than what you had coming out of week 4 against the Packers. They didn't give up a big play for the first time all season in the pass game. That's certainly a positive. I don't necessarily attribute that to anything changing in the secondary. Granted, they are playing more man. I think the balance is starting to find itself as far as zone versus man concepts that Eberflus is throwing out there in the secondary. It was really the pass rush getting home, though. For the pass rush to finally get to the quarterback, I think it affected the game top to bottom. And they had 5 sacks in this game after coming into the game with only 4 on the season. That's huge. And when you can have that type of production from your defensive front, it's going to help everybody involved. It's why Micah Parsons was so valuable during the time that he was here. And now you look at a guy like James Houston, who has 3.5 sacks, more than Micah Parsons somehow does through this point in the season. And, that's a big reason why they were able to keep Justin Fields and this passing offense neutralized on Sunday.
Speaking of passing offense, one particular passer had an outstanding day and has had continued a terrific season, and that's Dak Prescott. Now, I don't think you're going to find an MVP coming from a 500 team, but the quarterback of the Cowboys, coming off of a season-ending injury last year, looks terrific. I don't care what anybody says. He has played exceptionally well, and we have seen him have runs like this before where he has just put together spectacular stretches. I'm not sure he's ever been as good as he is right now. 71% completion percentage, a little bit more than 1,300 yards passing, 10 touchdowns, 12 carries for 50 yards. He looks great. I mean, he looks absolutely terrific. Can you think of a time, Nick, that you've covered him? And I think I've covered him more than I think I did. I can't think of a time where he's played as well as he is right now. Can you?
Yeah, I think back to that beginning of 2020 stretch where he was he was throwing for 420 yards a game or something.
But you know what? Let me stop. If you remember that stretch, they were always behind in those games.
For sure.
He was playing. He was amassing catch-up numbers. Against. So, he was killing it then. Don't get me wrong. Before he broke his ankle, but that was the one. It was the next season to me. Remember they started out like 6-1, and then he strained his calf in the overtime win at New England.
Yeah.
That to me is when he looked as good as God. He was good then.
And then you think about that 23 stretch where they won, what was it, 6 in a row, right after the bye week, and they changed things offensively coming out of that bye week. AKA they told McCarthy to take a back seat, and they were able to figure out some things offensively coming out of that bye week. No, I think right now it stands up with all those that we talk about. You can make the case for number 1, you can make the case for number 3. I'm not gonna argue semantics on it. I think if he ends up consistently carrying this stretch though throughout the course of the season, he is well on his way to having his best year as a quarterback in this league. I mean, you look at the numbers and how he's been able to take care of the ball, how he's been able to avoid pressure, get multiple weapons involved. Ryan Flanoy, where, why, and that's a credit to Dak Prescott and what he's been able to do. You mentioned MVP. We'll see. I think right now he's 7th, 8th in the odds. I honestly think that's really low. I think that's a good play right now. If you're a bettor out there, I think those are good odds to take right now. But if anything, he's well and above the favorite for comeback player of the year, and rightfully so.
Speaking of comeback, Jerry Jones has a comeback for all the haters. He says, "Help is coming." I'm like, what? Can you? I realize, Nick, I was talking about this with somebody who was a fan and a pretty well-to-do guy, and he said, "Why does he always say that?" And I said, have you ever met anybody who has been very successful in life who looked at something and said, "Well, we can't do that. That's not going to happen. It's not going to get done." The really super successful people, and I would put Jerry in that category, are the people who look at the mountain and say, "Oh, I can get up there. Yeah, we can do this for sure. Without oxygen, Jerry? Sure. Yeah, we can do this. Absolutely." And it's people like that who have just this unbridled optimism and outlook about whatever task they're doing. I'm going to put my money on them. I think sometimes he is a victim of his own optimism, victim being it's a little heavy. So when he says hope is coming, he's always said that. He's always believed it. And I admire the man for a lot of different characteristics and traits, but this is one of them. It's like, you got to believe, you got to believe, you got to believe. Well, okay, Nick, what the hell does this mean? Why do I have to believe hope is coming in week 6 of the regular season when the rosters are set? What does he mean?
Yeah, I think it's more so the injured players that he's hoping to get back. It's the injured offensive lineman. It's CeeDee Lamb coming back. It's DeMarvion Overshown, who we'll probably be talking about here in a few weeks to start making his comeback. Wow. I think that's starting to become a conversation here pretty soon. We could talk about these offensive linemen really quick. Left tackle Tyler Guyton, I expect him to be back on the practice field this week and play on Sunday. Left guard Tyler Smith, same exact situation. He's been dealing with some knee tendonitis. I think he gets back on the field. Center Cooper Beebe, he still has to miss another game. I think he ends up missing another couple of games. Then right guard Tyler Booker, who had a high ankle sprain in week 3 against the Bears, he was considered day-to-day going back to last Friday. So realistically, if they wanted to push it, he could play on Sunday against the Panthers. If you're asking me, though, the way TJ Bass has been playing, let Tyler Booker sit another week and get him ready for the Commanders the following week. CeeDee Lamb, they are going to try to get him on the practice field this week. We'll see if it happens. That would be big to get him back against the Panthers on Sunday. Then on the defensive side of the ball, they just put Malik Hooker on IR, so he has to miss the next 3 games. He already missed the 1 against the Jets. And then Jack Sanborn is dealing with a concussion, might not play on Sunday. So there's a lot of injured guys. I think he's more so talking about those guys coming back, talking about the offensive linemen, talking about CeeDee Lamb, talking about DeMarvion Overshown. That's probably what he's referring to.
I can buy that, but you mentioned one particular player in there, and I jotted it down because I forget everything now unless I write it down. Unless you made me mad. Somehow that I remember that one. Tyler Guyton. Tyler Guyton back on the practice field. Nate Thomas filled in. Is Tyler Guyton better than Nate Thomas?
Yes. I think so.
Is it even close? Is it even worth having a discussion?
I think it's worth having the discussion, and I understand the debate around it. I think Tyler Guyton is a little bit more refined, whereas Nate Thomas is still super green. Nate Thomas, at the end of the day, that was the first start that he's had since, December of 2023 when he was playing at Louisiana Lafayette against, I believe, South Alabama. So
that South Alabama team was loaded.
Exactly. Yeah, you can name all their defensive linemen right off the top of your head. But I think Nate Thomas to be able to step in and be the backup left tackle this year, that's a credit to his development, credit to his progressions, credit to the coaching staff to be able to identify that and put him in that spot. But all in all, there's still a lot of things that he has to refine. I think he's balanced like right up against the ceiling with Tyler Guyton when it comes to pass pro efficiency, but the run game stuff Nate Thomas has a lot of struggles with, and so that's where Tyler Guyton has the edge for me.
Okay, let's move on. The Dallas Cowboys on Sunday once again played the noon game. That tells you everything you need to know about what the people think about, the network people think about this game, even though it involves the Dallas Cowboys. They will go on the road again to play maybe one of the worst franchises in sports, the Carolina Panthers under owner David, is it Tepper? Is that his name?
It is.
David Tepper have become an absolute joke. However, this is more about the battle of the running backs. Rico Dowdle, the former Dallas Cowboys running back who was the starter for most of last season after the coaching staff finally acknowledged that he was a better option than Ezekiel Elliott. Rico Dowdle in his first season with the Carolina Panthers is having a nice year, 51 carries, 289 yards, 5.7 yards per carry with 2 touchdowns. That's pretty good. I was high on Rico Dowdle. I will give myself credit about that one last season. I thought he could be a decent running back, and only because, not because he was Walter Payton or Emmitt Smith or anything like that, because I thought he could be one of those guys. If you give him an opportunity, he could be pretty good.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of those guys, and they have a season or two, maybe 3, and then they just fall off the rails, and you just never hear from them again. And I thought Rico could be that. And he was pretty good. And Carolina's given him an opportunity, and he's been pretty good. However, Rico's replacement with the Cowboys has exceeded all expectations. Javonte Williams, an offseason ad from the Denver Broncos, 79 carries, 447 yards rushing, 5.7 yards per carry average, tore it up against the Jets, also has 5 touchdowns on the season.
Yeah.
Of the 2 developments here, and Rico has basically made this a personal deal. I don't know why, but okay, about playing his old team on Sunday. Of the 2, which one to you is the bigger surprise? Javonte's productivity with the Cowboys or Rico's continued productivity on a pretty bad team in Carolina?
Yeah, Javonte easily. That was something I did not expect coming in. I thought this team it's weird. I was going into training camp and I remember having the thought of like, I'm strangely confident in this running back group, but it was because more so of the youth of Jaden Blue and the experience of Javonte Williams. And Jaden Blue's been essentially a non-factor. He finally played on Sunday, had like 9 yards. He's been a non-factor in the run game. It's been Javonte Williams that has exceeded all expectations. He's top 3 in rushing. He's top 3 in rushing touchdowns at this point. Top 5, I believe, in run game effectiveness. I think he's number 1 in rush yards over expected at this point in the year. He's been a huge surprise. So yeah, I would go with that. But on the other side for Rico Dowdle, it was his decision to go to Carolina, and did
they offer? Did Dallas offer him a deal?
Man, I do not remember, if I'm being 100% honest.
No, probably not.
It was about a week into. It was about a week into free agency when he made that move to Carolina. It's funny because I was taking a flight to the Northeast the day he ended up signing with the Panthers, and I had a layover in Charlotte, and we ended up being on the same flight. I caught up with him a little bit after. It was about going back home for him, and he's from North Carolina, played high school ball there. And it was a big deal for him to be able to go back and play for the Carolina Panthers. And it was weird because that's a stacked room. Looking at it from that point of view, from that day, Chuba Hubbard, who was coming off a fantastic season last year. Jonathan Brooks, who the Panthers were trying to get on the field healthy. But now you look at it, Jonathan Brooks is out for the year. They put him on PUP, and they're going to let him sit throughout the entire season. Chuba Hubbard's now on IR, so it's Rico Dowdle having to step in. And, man, he stepped up and played phenomenally on Sunday. He had 206 yards on the ground and 28 yards through the air. I would be concerned if I'm the Dallas defensive front because you know how physical this runner is. And I think more so his post-game comments where he was like, buckle up. I think it was more so like those guys know what they're going up against, so they're going to have to buckle up. And I thought Shotty had a nice little rebuttal yesterday, and he was like, we're going to bring our seatbelts. So it's going to be fun.
I'm happy for him. I thought he was a good – I really am, because I thought he was put unfairly into a really awkward, hard position last season when, after they let go of Tony Pollard and he leaves to Tennessee. I thought this guy's going to get a chance, and I liked him. And I know he had some injuries, but I thought if you give him an opportunity, he's going to be pretty good. Yeah. And then they didn't. And for whether it was an upper management decision or whatever else, a trust issue, a pass pro issue, Ezekiel Elliott got it, and it was done. His best days were behind him. And I thought, this isn't fair to this kid who deserves a shot. And he had that big chance. I guess it was they finally gave him opportunities in the Sunday night game at Pittsburgh. I'm sure you remember it. You were there. And he was really good. And then they finally decided, okay, you'll be the starter. I'm like, yeah, well, yes, good. That's common sense. But, one thing about this, Nick, and you've covered it long enough to appreciate it, and I've talked to guys in sports about it, there is a political element to the depth chart, to the roster, that a lot of times fans don't always recognize. That who drafted you? Who is your guy? Is the owner involved here? Does the coach love you? And it's not always about who's the most productive guy or the common sense one. Those things play a role in it, even though it shouldn't. But it's an office space element to pro sports that people lose on. And I think Rico got caught up in that situation. One guy who did not get caught up in that situation, but you mentioned it earlier, and it's certainly worth mentioning, is what happened on Sunday. And that is what got into Ryan Flanoy, the second-year receiver, turns in a performance that looks like it's straight out of the Miles Austin playbook. Now, I was a Miles Austin fan. That's a former Cowboys receiver who came from a small college and slowly developed under Bill Parcells. And then there was a run in there. He was killing it, but he had a lot of hamstring injuries, so he didn't really keep it going. He did date a Kardashian. Not sure.
It was going to be one of my points. Damn.
That's right. I remember when she was at camp. I'm like, who is that? And it was the hot one. It was the one that was really hot without all the surgeries and stuff. Although I'm sure she did it now. I'm not sure which one it was.
It was Kim.
It was Kim. Was it?
It was Kim.
It was Kim?
It was.
Oh, I was wrong. I thought it was Courtney. Courtney was the one I really liked. Actually, that's a lie.
Noted.
No, I was always a Bruce Jenner guy. Whatever shape or form, I was always a Bruce Jenner guy. We can talk about that later. Ryan Flanoy, who has an R in his name, but you don't pronounce it. I don't like that about him. 9 catches, 114 yards against the Jets. This is a guy who, before this game, his previous career highs, 3 catches, 41 yards against Tampa Bay last season.
Yep.
Does that say more about the Jets, or does it say about Ryan Flanoy finally getting opportunities with Dak Prescott, and we're seeing a guy here who might be a player?
Yeah, I think it's both. This Jets secondary is not great outside of Sauce Gardner, and even Sauce Gardner gave up the big touchdown against George Pickens on Sunday, and he's had some lapses in coverage over the course of the last couple of years. But they were missing their other starting corner, and Dak Prescott was feeding the other side of the field, and it happened to be Ryan Flanoy that was the benefactor. Yeah, I think it says a lot about Flanoy. He was a guy over the offseason that when you talk to people, it's like, okay, who's in the facility every day? You hear Brock Hoffman, you hear Dak Prescott, you hear Overshown, then you hear Ryan Flanoy. It's like, okay, that's cool. That's good to hear, This is a guy who's, trying to compete for a roster spot at this point in the year, going into the season. And he ended up making the initial 53, then was cut about a couple days later, had to go through waivers, was brought back on the practice squad, then elevated. He was a roster gymnastics guy just a few weeks ago, and very well could have ended up on another 53-man roster elsewhere. But he lands back in Dallas, and then he has this opportunity. And Dak talked about it after the game. He was like, yeah, during the offseason, whenever I wanted to go throw, Ryan was saying yes every single time. Ryan was like, yeah, I'll be there. Yeah, I'll be there. And then we talked to Ryan in the locker room. He's like, yeah, there was times, I'd be hanging out with my girlfriend and be like, Dak wants to go throw. Sorry, I got to get out of here. And that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do as a pro. Yep. And I give him credit for that. I think it continues to open the conversation, Mac, and I'm going to continue to hammer it home. The trade deadline is less than a month away. You have a receiver that had 7 touchdowns a year ago that you don't need anymore, that is on an expiring contract that you could deal out and probably get some defensive help on the back end or draft picks. And that guy's name is Jalen Tolbert. And I think the emergence of Ryan Flanoy just continues to hammer that point home. I think they should be looking in the market to see what they can get for Jalen Tolbert.
What do you think they would get for Jalen Tolbert?
look, a guy that had 7 touchdowns a year ago. I think about that. I put that in comparison with, okay, the Ravens yesterday just traded a Dafe Owe. He had 10 sacks a year ago. I kind of put it in that category. It's like, okay, he had 10 sacks. Okay, he had 7 touchdowns, and they were able to get a starting caliber safety out of the deal. And so I think
they get a linebacker. Could they get a linebacker for Jalen Tolbert?
It depends how desperate a team is. And around trade deadline, you can find some desperate teams.
You mentioned it. You mentioned the trade deadline and what the Cowboys did last season. They're playing his old team. He's not going to be on the field. I keep forgetting Jonathan Mingo is a part of the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Where does he fit into this whole? Where does he fit into that room?
Yeah, that's a great question too, because he most likely is going to be ready to go this week. Whose roster spot does he take? I asked Schottenheimer on Friday. I was like, is there a consideration to just adding a receiver and taking a number away elsewhere? And he said, yeah, that's always a consideration. So it's not necessarily, hey, they got to stick to 5 receivers and they're going to have to take Flanoy out of the picture. They can't take a guy out of the picture that just had a 100-yard game. They can't do that. So it's and they're not going to take out Turpin, CD, Pickens, or Tolbert. So trade Tolbert. That's my argument.
You can convince me of that. Do you trade Tolbert and keep Jonathan Mingo?
Yes.
Wow, that was quick. Okay, we got 2 more topics to talk about here on Cowboys Overtime. One of them is Dallas Cowboys related. The other one is not. Both football. Obviously, it's prediction time. I'm a disaster. I don't even want to know what my record is. I got it wrong last week. I went with the upset pick because I thought the Jets were due. Like I said, I did not realize how bad the Jets are. They lose. They're winless. Poor Aaron Glenn. I really like him. I'd like to see him win in that job, but nobody else has. Cowboys, I think this line is down to 3. Dallas is favored by 3. Carolina is 2-3. Bryce Young is Bryce Young, whatever that means. I think Bryce Young, to me, is part of a larger discussion of developing quarterbacks. And we're seeing guys now. Baker Mayfield comes to mind. Daniel Jones with the Indianapolis Colts comes to mind. I was going to say Indiana Jones. Those are 2 guys and some other ones. Certainly Mac Jones and what Mac Jones did for the 49ers in an emergency start over Brock Purdy. You're seeing guys now who are high picks getting opportunities early, and it doesn't work out. Then they go someplace else, and then they look pretty good. Baker Mayfield looks terrific now. Mm-hmm. He does.
I really MVP candidate.
Pardon? Oh, absolutely. He looks great. But then there are other guys too. As I mentioned, Daniel Jones is one of them. Justin Fields, it doesn't look like it's going to work out. Maybe I'm wrong. But it's the whole idea of if you look at Bryce Young now, you're like, well, I don't know about this. Now, I was never a huge Bryce Young guy coming out of Alabama. There was something about him. I'm like, I'm not sure this is going to translate up. But I'm also the guy who, oh my God, I thought Baker Mayfield was going to be a bust. And that blew up in my face. Where do you put Bryce Young and his development and the patience the Panthers may be with in terms of him being their guy? Because he has shown some things. You say, that guy can play. And then there are other things you say, I don't know about that. This guy looks like he's not it.
Yeah, I think you're seeing progression with Bryce Young. And you remember they benched him last year for a couple of games for Andy Dalton. And I think when you saw him come out of that with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, you saw the progression. You saw some minor improvements. I think they need a steeper trajectory, though. They need a steeper trajectory out of Bryce Young. You know,
what do you mean steeper? Define that.
Like he's more so going like this, whereas they need him to go like this.
Yeah, they do. Okay.
I don't know if they have the time to wait on Bryce Young anymore. And you know, is this the last year that he gets the opportunity? I don't know about that, but I think they let him play out his rookie deal. But they invested a lot into Bryce Young. They traded up to go get him, and they spent their first round pick the year after, who they could have picked Caleb Williams with. Instead, the Bears got him. So they invested a lot into going and getting Bryce Young. They basically looked at the 2 quarterback classes and said, okay, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, we're going to go get Bryce Young and not pick in the first round next year. And that's effectively what they did. And, you know, they have to ride with that decision. And it's tough. It's tough. But I don't think Bryce Young is bad. I think he's in the bottom 10 easily of quarterbacks in the NFL, but they need more out of him quicker, I think, to justify keeping him for another contract.
Who would you rather have, him or CJ Stroud?
Stroud.
So
I'd rather have Stroud.
Not by a lot, but I agree with you. And I think some of it is team. Like what team that dictates so much whether or not you can be successful.
Yeah.
You know, what team are you on? And like you look at a guy like Bo Nix. Bo Nix is a pretty good player, but he's also in a pretty good organization, a pretty good team. So it's going to give you an opportunity to have some success. Brock Purdy's another one. Mac Jones gets out of New England, Mac Jones is a pretty good college player, and he looks like he can play. Look at the different Justin Herbert has under Jim Harbaugh now. And Matt Stafford, there's another one. But anyways, Cowboys are a 3-point favorite. Who do you like?
Yeah, I really like this Panthers defense. I do. And they are undefeated at home this year, which is strange to say. But I think the Cowboys go in and they get it done. They win by 1 possession.
Okay, I'm gonna do what you do. I've been so horrible. Now it'll probably burn me this week, so I'll probably be taking you down. But I'll go with you. I'll say the Cowboys will win. They won't cover, but they'll win. Okay, last topic here on Cowboys Overtime. We're not going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys, but we're going to be talking about the biggest story in college football, and that is Arch Manning. It is Texas OU weekend at the Cotton Bowl this weekend in Dallas. The game is at 2:30. Oklahoma is the underdog.
Really?
Yeah. Now, unless it flipped, they were a 2-point dog a couple of days ago. Well, it doesn't. They have UT was the preseason number 1. They're not even in the top 25 following a loss at Florida, a bad Florida team or a meh Florida team where Arch Manning and the offense couldn't do much of anything, even though it was probably Arch Manning's best game. Yeah. We have the New York Times weighing in saying Arch Manning is the biggest bust ever, blah, blah, blah. Where are you on the Arch Manning narrative, Mr. Harris?
I think he has one of the worst offensive lines in Power 4 football, and that's not doing him any favors. If this is a year, and I said this after they lost to Ohio State, I was like, look, if this is a year where the Texas has to go 7-5, 8-4 behind an awful offensive line. Arch has to learn some lessons along the way, but he gets snaps and he gets passing attempts. Yeah. Then I think that's honestly fantastic for his progression. And if he struggles along the way, so be it. I think about the Joe Burrow year, the year before he really took off. What would that would have been in 2019? That 2018. 18 season. Yep. Yeah. I think about that with Joe Burrow. It's where he just needed the time. He needed the experience. He needed the reps. He had a bad offensive line in front of him. It's very similar to, I think, what Arch is dealing with right now. But Texas has to do him favors this offseason. They have to go get offensive linemen in the portal. They have to go get a big-time receiver in the portal. If they can't do either of those two things, I don't know if I have confidence in Arch being able to, get back to the prowess that he had coming into the year. I do still think he's really talented. Do you think he's hurt? We talked about that a little bit. I think he was earlier in the year, but now the arm angle trajectory stuff is starting to look a lot better. The mechanics are starting to look a lot better. He's starting to get more comfortable in the pocket. He's facing so much pressure. Go back and watch that. I think it was the 50-plus yard touchdown he had to Ryan Wingo, where he put it right into his hands in the end zone. He had to avoid so much pressure on that play, stepped up, made a throw, and took a hit. And that happened a few times in that game against Florida. He wasn't doing that against Ohio State. So there's already progression that we're seeing over the course of a few weeks. I'm not out on Arch Manning, but I understand the criticism around him right now because of all the hype he had coming into the year. But I'm not out whatsoever.
Neither am I. I think betting against Arch Manning is the dumbest idea ever. Now, just to double check, Texas is a 1.5-point favorite. Texas is 3-2. Oklahoma is 6th in the nation, 5-0. John Mateer, their starting quarterback, who had surgery to repair, I believe, a broken thumb 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
He wants to play. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But okay, say he plays. I could see Texas winning this game, but they're not very good. They're because I think everybody involved totally discounted how much talent walked out the door the last couple of years.
Yeah.
On the offensive line, we missed on that, and big-time playmakers on the outside and in the backfield. And I think there's just this idea, because some programs have done it, where we'll just replace those guys. We have 4 and 5 stars. And have they played yet? Have they developed? Are they any good? We've seen plenty of teams load up on 4 and 5 star recruits, and they're just not very good. They don't play that way.
Florida.
Pardon?
Florida.
Oh, that's a great example. You just go up and down the SEC, because you and I could talk. Oh my gosh, we could write books about this. But I'm not betting against Arch Manning. And I know one of them. So look at the high school kids he played against. There's a ton of kids coming out of academies and private high schools now who are going into Power 4 Division I football and doing just fine. I'm not betting against him. And it's not just the DNA and the hair, the lineage and all that stuff, although that's a perfectly good reason to bet on a guy. That's fine.
Yeah.
Go back and watch him play against Mississippi State last season. And then the other start we had against, I think it was Louisiana Monroe or something like that.
Yep.
He was damn good.
Yeah.
That's the guy who's going to come back.
Yeah.
His line's terrible. Clearly, I think despite all of the advantages that he had as a Manning, you're still a starting quarterback at the University of Texas for the first time in your life.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot. But I'm not betting against this guy, Nick. And in fact, it really wouldn't surprise me if Texas goes in there and ruins Oklahoma's season and upsets them. I don't know if I'm sure Brent Venables is supposed to talk. He might be talking right now on our SEC coaches conference call. And we'll know. I mean, he'll lie through his teeth about whether Mateer is going to play. But
it's been funny. They've been practicing indoors all week. It's the first time Oklahoma's done that going into a game in a couple of years.
That's a coincidence. Who do you think is going to win?
I'm taking Oklahoma. I think their defensive front is just too powerful. I think it's going to get through that Swiss cheese offensive line that Texas has, and it's going to make life really difficult for Texas. But as this game has proven throughout both of our entire lifetimes, this is a game where you throw the records out, you throw the projections out, and what everything happens, and just watch the game. And it could certainly go either way. Now, go ahead.
I was going to make the other one. I want to make sure we mention it. Maybe you were going to throw it out. Texas. The other big game in Texas this weekend is in Denton.
Yes, I was.
I'm very excited about this. The Mean Green 5-0.
Mm-hmm.
Inside track on the Group of 5 playoff spot will host a very good South Florida team. Canceled classes on Friday. They want to pack the place. Sorry for the noise in the background. We have people there. I don't know if you can hear it or not. Who do you like on Friday night at Denton, at the Pit? I don't even know if it's called the Pit. Who do you like on Friday night? I really want to see UNT get this one.
Yeah, pack the dat is what they're saying. But they've already sold out the lower bowl. I think they have like 6,500 tickets left to sell. Look, man, if you're a North Texas fan, this is one worth getting up to Denton for on Friday night. It's going to be one of the biggest regular season games in program history for North Texas, especially at home. I don't want to say ever because they beat Florida in the swamp back in the 60s, and then they started 5-0 back in the 50s and beat Florida State that year.
They beat Arkansas and Fayetteville a few years ago. That was a big one.
Arkansas and Fayetteville. They dominated Arkansas and Fayetteville that year. That really spelled the end for Chad Morris. I think, gosh, I want to pick North Texas.
Pick them.
I really do, but I think South Florida is going to win this game, and I hope I have egg on my face next week when we talk about this game because if North Texas wins, they are going to be ranked for the first time since that 1959 season, and man, that'd be huge.
That'd be great. Well, go Mean Green. Cowboys on Sunday against the Carolina Panthers. They're the noon kick. Texas, Oklahoma on Saturday at 2:30. TCU plays Kansas State. Forgot to mention A&M and probably the best team in Texas, Texas Tech. We'll do that next week. Yep. Nick, this has been great. Enjoy your flight to Carolina. For all of your Cowboys and everything else coverage needs, including Dua Lipa, keep it here on StarTelegram.com. See you next week.